Hey guys, welcome to the last video in the chapter of homeostasis. So before we move on, let me give a quick reminder of what we talked about before. We talked about the fact that the cell's membrane is made out of lipids and proteins and other things, but right now for this chapter, we care about lipids and proteins. Second thing we talked about was passive transport, which is things just spreading. That's it. You have a whole lot of something over here. Nature doesn't want that. Nature wants balance. So these things are just going to start spreading out evenly until they're all over the place, spread equal distance apart. Right? That's passive transport. We call that diffusion. Concentration gradient, nature says no, so it spreads. Now, if you happen to have a membrane, lipids and proteins wrapping around the cell, remember that you happen to have the membrane right down the middle here, then all these things are going to have to get through the membrane. And we talked about how that happens. Diffusion just goes right on through, no problem. Facilitated diffusion, we have a protein doorway. It just goes through the protein and now it's in. But what if we didn't want that to happen? What if it's sugar, but it's too much sugar? We don't want that much sugar. It's bad for you that much. So you need to keep it out, kick it back out. Say, no, do not get into my cell. So if we want to do that, we're going to have to work for it. We're going to have to use our own energy to fight nature. Nature wants to bring it into our cell, and we have to work to get it back out. So let's talk about how that happens. All right, so if you remember, we talked about ATP. Active transport requires ATP because that is our energy source, right? Remember this molecule, adenine, ribose put together, we call it adenosine. And then triphosphate, 3 phosphates, adenosine triphosphate, ATP. Well, if we rip this phosphate off, then energy comes out and we get to use that energy. That's our energy, right? When you start running out of this, that's when you start feeling tired. So that is going to be what we use to get our pumps working. And yes, pumps. Pumps are what we are going to use for active transport, where we are going to take the things that are inside of our cell and push them back out, or take the things outside of our cell and pull them in, and we are going to do this using our energy. And the most common one tests like to use is called the sodium-potassium pump, where you have a whole lot of sodium outside your cell, and this pump is going to pull it in, and a whole bunch of potassium inside, you're going to push it back out. Right, so that's what we're looking at right now. This is the sodium-potassium pump, where we have sodium on the outside, but we're not seeing that much down below. So what does nature want? Nature wants these sodiums to spread out evenly, have some up here and some down here. So this sodium wants to come in. That's what nature wants, but we don't want that. Right? Sodium, too much sodium is bad for you. So we want to kick it out. We want to prevent sodium. In fact, not only do we want to prevent the sodium from getting in, we want to take the sodium we do have and kick it back out. And that's what we're going to be seeing. We're going to take the sodium we do have, and notice that this is closed up here to the outside world. So now this just appears to be like an empty space, and nature is going to make them spread into an empty space. And once they're there, what is this? ATP is going to come in. This phosphate is going to connect. And boom. Do you see that little flash of light there? Check that out real quick. And boom. That energy right there is going to transfer into this, change the shape of the protein, which is going to kick the sodium out. So all the sodiums wanted to get in, and we just used our energy to kick it back out. And while it's like this empty space is going to draw in some potassium. And once this energy runs out, the protein changes back to its shape to bring the potassium in. So potassium wanted to get out, and we brought more in. We fought nature. We fought nature. We did what nature didn't want to do. That required our energy. Because just because nature wants it doesn't mean we do. Here's an example for you. Right now we're under quarantine. By the way, if you're watching this way in the future, this is currently July of the year 2020. We are uh, trying to limit our interactions in order to prevent a disease from spreading, COVID-19, right? And the government had asked us to stay inside as much as possible. So after a while, we got kind of stir crazy and everybody wanted to try to go outside and spread around and do things. And people are like, no, I want to try to use my energy to keep you guys all in, even though everybody wants to get out. So this guy is using his energy. That is what is happening. This is your pump keeping the potassium in, even though the potassium is trying to get out. It's the same deal. And what we got is a concentration gradient, one that nature doesn't want. So as we keep pushing things out with our energy, there's our energy right there, use to kick it back out and make an even stronger concentration gradient. And now we don't have too much sodium in our cells because too much sodium is bad for you. And we got a lot more potassium in because potassium is good for you. You get potassium from eating bananas, by the way. Eat more bananas. All right, so there are a lot of different videos showing how sodium potassium pumps work. I thought those were the easiest ones to follow, but if you have any other questions about it, please contact me. But for now, I am moving on. Endocytosis. Guys, if you remember last video, I asked you guys to remember a key word. So let's go back to that key word real quick. That key word was vesicle. Vesicle is a bubble, not this. This is your cell. And you know, all the organelles in there, they're kind of in the way, so let's get rid of those real quick. Right. A vesicle is a bubble made out of lipids. But your cell membrane is made out of lipids. They're made out of the same thing, right? Yes, that's important, which means they're going to go together. They're kind of a package deal. So this red thing, whatever this is something that we do want in our cells. But look at this, it's too big. It can't get through the membrane. So if you don't have an entrance for it, you don't already have an existing protein to get it in, then this is something else we can do. We can create a vesicle, which means your cell can wrap its lipids around this, whatever this red thing is, and then pinch off. And now we have a bubble made out of cell membrane lipids. And this bubble is free to just float around the cell to go where it needs to go. And when we're done with it, we can just backtrack and reattach to the membrane and kick it back out. Right? I just showed you two different things, endocytosis and exocytosis. Endocytosis is when we create the vesicles to enter the cell, to bring nutrients in. If there's something that our cells need, we can force it in with these bubbles. So let's break that word down. Endo. Endo means to enter. Endo means inside. And cytosis means having to do with the cytoplasm. So what we're doing is causing this bubble, this vesicle, to enter the cytoplasm. So endocytosis, entering the cytoplasm with a vesicle. Exocytosis now is creating vesicles to exit the cell. Right? You have some organelles inside that are also wrapped in lipid membranes that can create their own vesicles. So remember, the Golgi apparatus from chapter 1, its job is to kick things out of the cell. It's the post office, right? So it is going to use its own lipids, its own fatty material, because lipids make fat, and wrap the protein up in a vesicle, which is then going to go rejoin the cell membrane and kick the protein out. So let's break this word down. Exo, exit. Exo has to do with exterior, being on the outside. So exocytosis is exiting. So this is really important because this is what makes your nervous system work. Your nervous system, meaning your brain and all the other nerves attached to it, is based on hormones, chemicals that jump from one neuron to another neuron. It's something called a synapse. Your brain is made up of a bunch of cells called neurons, and they all interconnect with each other, and they communicate by sharing those hormone chemicals. The hormones tell you what to do, and where the neurons meet with each other is called a synapse. At the end of the neuron, at the synapse, you see Vesicles. Those vesicles, these bubbles, are filled with hormone chemicals that need to leave this neuron and go to this neuron. So we can see them showing up and joining the membrane to kick the chemicals out. And that's how they're going to communicate. So let's zoom in and see that happen up close. There's your vesicle. See the lipids, the circles with the tails and the circles with the tails. All right, this is a phospholipid bilayer, just like your cell. And inside is all the hormone chemicals. It's going to go down and meet up with the phospholipid bilayer of the cell's membrane for the neuron. Remember, the neuron is a cell, it has its own membrane. They're going to interconnect. The lipids are going to join each other and become one membrane again, which then kicks all the hormone chemicals out and goes to the next neuron. And then that process is going to keep repeating itself. That's how your nervous system works. So endocytosis, exocytosis, very important. So don't forget that, guys. Sodium potassium pumps are tools to kick things in and out of your cell, and vesicles are also tools to kick things in and out of your cell. So that is it for homeostasis and transport. If you have any questions, please contact me. I understand this gets really confusing for some people, right? Very easy to mix things up. So please email me, contact me, we'll talk. And I'll show you more examples. But until then, check Google Classroom, see if I left you any work, and I will see you in the next chapter.